and displacement and start over, and you're the master of that.
No,
You're a good guy.
I'm not the only good guy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of. I want to say, if you know, it's not only about selecting the right book, but also change the cover.
Mhm.
You know, that's more clever in China. You know, we cannot ignore the government, and the government play a very important role. Some of the part are very good,
Mhm.
because you know, in the afternoon I talked with Peter Rowe.
Mhm.
He said the urban generation issue is the most important thing in China right now. And the second thing is, don't think in the Western type of mind, because it's totally different. And the government made something really tremendous, successful. You know, we move 500 million people from the rural area to the urban, and nothing really bad happened during that process. Not that bad. Okay? So yeah, we need to play with them, and also we need to find a way.
But the whole cultural pattern of those people has been transformed in exchange for higher quality houses with toilets and kitchens.
I don't have the I cannot say like that, because I can see something remain there.
Yeah.
The way of people behave,
Mhm.
and they want to find something deep in their mind in the new city
Right.
to make like monument, or they donate
Mhm.
to keep something.
Yeah.
And also, you know, by now a lot of people go back to the rural area to, you know, the younger generation has the education and know how to make money, or how to do things in the urban area. They want to move back. They want to renew the village.
Mhm.
They want to do something to keep that heritage, and also make the regenerate the whole thing. So I think that's the process.
Mhm.
We need to be optimistic about that.
Well, you had the young woman that moved back to the courtyard,
Right.
right?
Yeah, so we were very excited about that. I mean, she just came to us, and we, you know, these areas, they're older people that live there. I mean, those are the only people that would be able to do those conditions. So when we saw it, it made us extremely optimistic. Oh, this does happen, and you listen to her story, it makes sense, right? She just works very close to
Right.
that location.
That's good optimal location.
And she was born there, so there already was this connection, but she had to have her standard of living raised up. She had just gotten married, she was expecting, and so she had to make sure that the environment was right.
Kind of curious. It's interesting how all three of you guys have such different disciplinary practices, right? Developer, maybe curator, filmmaker, architect. But what's interesting, the commonality to all of your practices, I think, is how art plays this sort of performative role. And I'm thinking about largeness of scale. I think you, in a way, as a developer, are trying to get back down to this fine grain with dealing with, you know, whether it's maximizing the footprint of very small spaces or looking at relations between existing inhabitants. Or let's say, oh, your practice, your interest in placemaking is about expanding it to a larger historical and international scale. I find really interesting. Or James, taking a very, you know, this sort of like adaptations of these small spaces, but developing a system that might be able to scale up. So there's this interest in going from the very micro to the very macro in all of your practices, but somehow art becomes a sort of the agent that communicates between those scales that I find really interesting. I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit more about how, because I'm thinking of I just read this book After Art by David Josselin, and he talks about how art we can already acknowledge like the art market now has been completely captured by the speculative markets, right? It's completely in bed with the capital flows of neoliberalism. But what's still interesting, he's trying to be optimistic, what's still interesting about art is this thing that can bring together, what he says, philosophers and billionaires, right? Art has a capacity to produce something more durable and something new that other formulas can't generate. And I think that's what all three of you are trying to do if we look at things optimistically. So actually I would say don't be so anxious about being a developer, right? Because
Gen X.
okay, okay. Then maybe you should be a little more anxious. So I'm just curious how you guys are talking about art as being.
Well, you're the real artist.
When we talk about art, actually art is a very abstract concept. So art has many different kind of instruments, right? So today a lot of artists they produce art, especially for market. No and connection with the reality, the ordinary people. Okay, the art fair, gallery, museum, the whole art quality is just making aesthetic for consumers, for money. And but I think after 1989, there's a lot of artistic practice they trying to make a different way. That is why a lot of people, a lot of artists trying to connect people.
You're speaking in the Chinese context.
No, global. I mean, after the Cold War, there's quite a lot of this kind of practice, like the Asian Times, the organization in New York. They did a lot of interesting projects to engage the people, to connect the community. I think the main reason before I start my rural projects, actually I'm very active in the contemporary art scene. There was a lot of exhibition in the city to help the media to get the attention from the people. It's a spectacle making like that. But I totally getting bored and I find that it make no sense and I continue to do this. I found in the countryside actually the property lines totally gone after the television revolution. Okay, but in the city, every day, every week, so many exhibitions, so many openings, so the artistic events overload. But compared to the city, the countryside or the county, the small town, they don't have any cultural or artistic resources. They don't have public life. So that's why I decided to move to the countryside and maybe transform myself from artist to artists. That using art as a medium to maybe connect it with a deeper reality. That is a huge challenge for artists because you talk about engage people, the community art, dialogue arts, you need to get yourself done. You need to do this the authority. I mean, you could not put yourself as an artist. You have to be like activator. You make something happen. You build a bridge between the art resources and the community. So with this role, maybe you can make a new way.
I mean, James, that was kind of part of the beginnings of that project, right? Also, but there's something about the performance of actually putting the thing together yourself, right? Opening up your studio to the community as well. There was a kind of social exchange that seemed like it was important to the project.
Well, we started doing a lot of things that were seen as art in a sense. And like a lot of offices, as you start out, you do installations. And generally, this is what we could get. But we were disappointed with what happened after. You know, we wanted there to be some. We wanted these projects to lead to something. And so I think a project like Dashalar gave us that opportunity to actually use this approach that is widely accepted in art, where you're trying things out. People are communicating with you in different ways, and we were surprised also that art gave you sort of license to be abstract and be creative and try new things. If you say you're an architect, then you're gonna go this like heavy weight of you could hurt someone or something like that. But if it's art, oh yeah, and I have all this funding and try this and so we kind of I would say that this is actually I would call it an intervention. I mean, you could say it's art and take it away and it's fine again. So that was also a way to make the authorities feel that it was low risk, you know, but it worked instead. So and in terms of art and activism, engaging people, we carefully selected our name, People's Architecture, and we felt as architects starting out that there was not that relationship with people, and also to be political. It's fundamentally our work.
We have to wrap it up. If the other guys could come up from the first panel so we can applaud everybody, that would be great. Oh, yeah, Q&A, 2 minutes? Okay, we got Q&A first, and then we'll bring questions?
Well, thank you very much for this quite exciting examples. The question is that when the land price in China, in most Chinese cities, rise so rapidly, how sustainable are these cases would be in the future? And if the people you are dealing, for example, in Dar es Salaam, and you may run into the renter who do not really care so much, and the renter may care the price and the comfort, right? If you help them to improve the insulation, they feel more comfortable, the owner may raise the price. And then the owner in Beijing, I suspect, would very much want the government to demolish the whole thing so that he will get the compensation, move to another area, and this will become a high-rise building. The reason that Dar es Salaam remains maybe the reluctance of the government how to deal with this part, because on one hand they want to preserve this historical neighborhood, on the other hand the commercial drive, I mean the money, the land, all these things, they push the government to deal with this, and the owners of course are sided with the government. So the question is how sustainable is your work?
Yeah, I think everything you've said is absolutely true. And as Neil and Yijing mentioned, Dashalar is a very unique situation. It is protected. It's a completely controlled market. The only developer is a state-owned developer, so there are no other actors. So what that means is it bought us a little bit of time to even have this happen. You know, so will that happen eventually? It's very possible. It's hard to say. But it did give us a bit of a chance to try things out. And things do happen very quickly. What you're saying is oriented towards the renter. And I still haven't found a very good way anywhere where you're really able to protect the renter, even in the States. I want to find that. I want to be a part of that. But protecting the owners is pretty. And in China, you don't even own the land; you own the property. Yeah, in this case, yeah, we were working directly with the owner themselves, so and the investment was low enough that you could get that to happen. But yeah, I think it does require if it's like a community land trust, something like that, then maybe there'd be more of a collective effort to be a little bit more sensible in the development.
But yeah, we're increasing the quality, adding value, and therefore you can extract more value.
Let me add one thing here. Taiwan has one way to deal with it. It's a transferable development right.
Uh-huh.
If you go to see the case of Taichung, they protect the historical area and allow another area for the rebuild of the new CBD. And basically, the profit made here, part of the profit is transferred to the historical area.
Yeah, that is something I've seen that a few places are trying. Yeah, basically to allow more people to have a piece of the pie, I guess. Right.
But the other way is to treat the old as so precious and turn it into Greenwich Village and make it incredibly expensive and shove everybody else out into the high rises and there you go. So, you know, this is the model. We know how it works.
Maybe I can answer that question partly. You know, in Shenzhen, the example I showed you, if we want to demolish it and make new buildings, it should be 100 stories high, because you know it's so dense, and the original situation is like 10, 12 stories. So if you really, like a developer, really want to do the math, the model doesn't work. So it's not you have choice. It's you have to protect this, turn it to another situation, make it better, and keep that memory of the city, because you know you don't have another way to go. And the land price of this village is zero, because it's totally different system. It's not government owned. It's the collective, you know, the right. It's different. It's
But
forever.
it's not valueless.
The collective
It's
form as a
has a
country,
Exactly.
they always want the government to demolish their village.
Yeah.
That's the case in Shenzhen. I mean, Nanshan, that's the area, and I met the committee people, and they actually hate the government keep that place because they want to be a billionaire overnight.
the financial model will help. You know, we have the village has a special bank, special credit, and they can get the cash flow like the rental to exchange like a bigger amount of money, and they can, how to say, if they do this model, they can exchange the value in advance.
In anticipation.
Right. So there is a way.
It's actually set up naturally as a community development, a community land trust in a sense, because it's already collected. But the problem is the owners are such a small percentage of the population, right? So it almost doesn't.
But basically, the Shenzhen model today is to kick out all the renters, and the original villagers basically take the money, and the real estate developer come there. One third of the development value go to the public services, and one third for profit, and one third go back to the original owners.
The problem is you get the piece of the pie, but the city is still.
I think it's turning. I think that particular time, it's, you know, the situation is turning. The government realize if they demolish all of this and make the sky high buildings, it will be disaster. And also, you know, Shenzhen, you know, in the past 9 years, they didn't sell any real estate land, only industrial type of land. So they don't make money from selling property land. It's totally different than the other kind of cities, very healthy. So we care about the existing thing more, not the new stuff.
But I just want to say something really quickly. Is maybe the issue is not the type of change, but that there's a transition. So I mean, I think that even for us to have something there for a certain amount of time, just to ease a bit of that transition might be valuable. And maybe we can think of projects as transitional projects, because in the end they really are. I think what's really bad is when it's extremely drastic, and there's a lot of speculation, and then it won't just kind of.
I think just want to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Shenzhen's situation, one of the reason is really because 40% or more of residential housing are built on collective land, which is not a formal housing market. So it's not that the government is not willing to grant new residential land for development. On one hand, is because when Shenzhen was first developed, it doesn't have a lot of land to begin with, and it doesn't zone and doesn't allocate a lot of land for residential development in the beginning. So it's just it's not just because that the government is like hoarding land, it's not like granting it. That's one thing I feel like just needs some clarification. And the second thing that I is a question is that who for the second case of the library case in a rural area, who owns the library? Is it owned by the villager collective? Is it owned by a village corporation, or is it owned by someone else? That's my question.
In Bishan village, the Bishan bookstore, that was the first bookstore opened in rural area. So at the very beginning, I have an idea to open a bookstore in the countryside, and then I went to Nanjing. There is a big bookstore there, the Avantgarde bookstore.
I'm from Nanjing.
Really now. And then I asked the owner if he interested to open a bookstore there. He got very interested, and then I went to the local government to talk with them. If to persuade the government to allow the owner, the bookstore owner from Nanjing, to use a local family hall, a system hall, like a temple, very beautiful Angkor style vernacular architecture. And then the local government was the hall, the temple was owned by the villagers collectively. And the local government persuaded all the villagers to agree to use by Qian Xiaohuang,
Right.
the Avantgarde bookstore owner, for free for 20 years. And that became, the course is very long, just move the book from Nanjing to Bishan and then can open the bookstore. That is the case in Bishan. The architecture was owned by the villagers collectively, and the bookstore owner can use it for free. And for the neighborhood library in Yantai, it's a different story. Because we really want to make a library in neighborhood. And I think Shouchenli was a very complicated historical area. And it also, a lot of Yantai people have very emotional connection with those areas. And then I proposed the private company who are going to do the Cecil district to open a bookstore in another neighborhood. Because Shouchenli is quite, it's not same neighborhood, it's a different. And as a sample, then I proposed the private company to rent a house in Shouchenli neighborhood for 5 years, and with very low cost, we invite Dong to design the architecture for free. Dong did not charge any fee, design fee, so it's totally just realize the idea to open a neighborhood library as activators to try to present our idea, neighborhood idea to the government, because we need the support from the government. So the neighborhood library was owned by the private company and shared with all the community people.
Thank you. Yeah, because that makes a lot of sense. That is actually to operate and to make it a sustainable project, you need actually a lot of the professional operational capacity. And Avantgarde bookstore is actually a great bookstore that is a very influential cultural brand because actually there were a lot of other, I guess there's some kind of replicas or followers of this model, but sometimes those projects may not be as financially or operationally sustainable because they might not have that expertise and they don't know where to get the books and they don't have that experience of running it, and they probably don't even know how to engage actively with the local villagers. And thank you for answering my question.
I have a question to the People's Architect Office, and thanks for your presentation. And I'm really highly attracted for the deployable door. It can be transformed into a canopy in your case. And I go through your website, and all the project, most of the projects are deployable, are multi-functions. So I just wonder, is this basic quality that you guys want to apply this quality to these small-scale historical buildings? Does it account for that?
Well, I think so. This kind of relates to the art question. For us, in terms of how we can communicate with the people around us, what we saw was a lot of the informality around us, and I'm not trying to romanticize what that is, but it's really, but what you see in the informal building is people sort of solving problems in their ways with whatever they have at hand, and all of our strategies are pretty much lessons that we found from what we saw around us. So that door is a way of adding space which is illegal, but making it open up means that it's not permanent, and therefore it's okay. And so okay that the government's fine with it. So we actually, you see people already testing out a lot of the gray areas, what you can and cannot do, and I think that's a source of creativity. And we hope that we embody a bit of that culture in our project.
I have a question for Jess. I really like your strategy to use modular prefabricated technology as an approach to solve the housing crisis in San Francisco. But currently, I think to build an annex building at your backyard is not allowed by the regulations. So, what is the planning authority feedback to this one?
It is allowed.
It is.
Yeah. So that's the only reason why we're interested. But I think what's interesting is in China this all happens, but it's not formal. And like what was mentioned earlier, in the rural areas with the land use, it's not a formal market. But all these things that we learn here, they're starting to turn into something that's formal to solve a problem. But in fact, if you look at, you just look at Cambridge or Boston, these houses were added on in periods and lots of additions. So actually, I hope that we can understand that cities are kind of these living things that keep changing and can't be master planned in that way. Hopefully one day we can get closer to that.
Yeah, I have a question. Like today, we hear a lot of projects how either in Beijing or in Shenzhen, first-tier cities in China, which has a lot of development works. I also heard of projects like in Yantai, Shandong, which is like second-tier, third-tier cities, which I think these two are completely two different kind of scenarios. So I wonder if you, for example, like France and also in James, like if you have ever do projects in the third-tier like cities in China, like is there a conflict? Like, is there any experience you can share? Because I felt like some cities are not facing the problem is they are losing population rather than having a population coming in. I guess this is another different challenge for those.
It's funny you mention that because we also worked with Oneng on the Oneng project, so there's a lot of interconnection. But I mean, just for us, because again, like we really try and look a lot at the framework that something can happen under, and then also the business ecology, or like how these independent businesses. And I mean, the Yantai was super interesting because there's a lot of young people there who are all coming back from like Shanghai or Beijing or overseas and starting up like independent bookstores or like really interesting little restaurants and things like this that actually in Shenzhen is pretty hard to find that sort of stuff. But because of the just extremely expensive rental market there, it like just doesn't give any space for young people to start things up. So it's it was very different. I mean, the Yantai project was sort of a special case because from us coming from Dar es Salaam, we had just a direct line. There was a direct, whenever we handed something over to the developer, there was a direct line to the government. But in Yantai, they just had a lot of trouble just even being able to communicate with the government, right? And it was so difficult. And in that sense, they never got the framework above to actually support all the things that were happening on the ground.
But I really enjoy the work in Yantai. After I stay and work in the village for 5 years, I really enjoy the challenge from a small city, a small place. It's more interesting than you do some projects in Beijing and Shanghai because you have faced a lot of problems. You have to find a solution. That was so interesting. To meet the challenge, to make the special thing, and also the local knowledge is amazing. It's very different from the global idea because they still have some special knitting, some local very different from the business.
That's the same as Xiamen, but that's because the government is a little bit behind in terms of these new ways of practicing. So there's been more room for new possibilities.
There's a certain moment for our project in Dr. Lara where what was really amazing was we had the mayor from Beijing come to our 20 square meter project, which was crazy, and that was possible because of the Dr. Lara platform. So that's really interesting. But also it was extremely scary that he all of a sudden invited us to this humongous meeting with everyone from all the different districts in the government, and they were reporting, and he wanted to show our project. But then his idea of how to do this was very different from ours. He wanted it like citywide, like crazy scale, which I think in big cities it's sort of either you kind of fail or just kind of go. Either way, you're going to fail. So maybe I wonder in a city where maybe it's a little bit smaller, it might take more time to build up those relationships, but maybe it's a little bit more controllable, in terms of a long-term strategy. For us, yeah, it is also a fear that it just goes out of control. I'm sure it would have been more.
What's the, this is an open question for everyone. So what is the most unexpected positive side during your process of design? And I mean the most unexpected positive side the government you have worked with provided. Because emphasis has this flaw. We found out about the flaws within Chinese government in terms of the urban development and renovation. But I would like to hear something about the most unexpected positive side.
There is one. Well, my experience was very positive because I had great people sort of translating for us. I mean, it was really interesting seeing a window into the structure. It has so many layers. It was crazy. For here to talk to the mayor, it's not a big deal. You can do it. But man, there, he's like the president. I mean, it was crazy. And then on top of that guy, there was also, so there is that kind of big barrier. But but also it's also interesting that with this kind of a project, with a cultural project, an art festival type of thing, that you can generate enough noise to actually cut through some of that. So yeah, that's all interesting. You feel that there is a lot of power to what we do.
There is a saying I never thought about before I did this project. As I mentioned, I care about the business model, how to make it more efficiency, and I can tell everyone how to make it. I mean, how to set up the bottom line of that value. And a lot of 20s, like young generation, they want to start a new shop, like a coffee shop or something like that. He don't really know how to do it, and he doesn't understand the space, the value, the content, and the service. We try to ask some Japanese guy and some local guys to help them to minimize the space and how to link with the service and content. And by now we have different, like 40 different little shops. And they are so enthusiastic to create these kind of things. I mean, the young generation. So that's beyond my expectation. We know how to communicate with the government. We know how to ask James to do great design. And we know how to renovate the construction work. But we really care about the content, how to make that happen. I think that's the most hopeful thing in our city, that people want to create something new with the new standard. Not only an empty space with no rent and I can do something new, but follow the regulation of the market and also can create something new out of it.
Alex, can you just follow on your business model discussion? I'm a little curious, like, so one tool in the middle, are you only the developer, or are you also the manager of the entire, like, does this also is possible, like, either for the collective or for the, I know some villages have their collective cooperation, and some villages may not have that kind of authority, so when you talk about business model, like,
As a developer, try to do this kind of things. It's not that easy because making homes and sell it makes more money. We did a lot of like 3 million square meters last year, and the media just has a lot of different opinion against us because the rent getting higher and the local guys don't really happy, and the construction side is not safe enough because you need to, very complicated. But still, we try to do things in a long term, and we try to help them to manage it if they want us to help, because the local leader of that village, maybe he want to control everything. So yeah, that's his kingdom. But if he has an open mind and see we create some extra value for yeah, we have that chance. We are quite open, but we try not to do every village. We don't spread. We try really like the land. We want to do some less things, but do it long term and make it successful. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, one. Just to follow up this question. Now you are the developer. You don't build, you don't sell. You just come in and help the urban village to renovate so that they have a better living condition, perhaps at a higher rent, and you make the spaces small, and that's the way you can be profitable. Now my question is that, do you partner with the village collective, and then you have the revenue sharing model? Otherwise you won't do it, you have to make a profit, but you are not the owner of the project. How you make the profit? And where the profit come from? I mean, for you as a developer.
Yeah. the profit come from the gap of the rental. I mean, yeah, we make it better. It's a value add. As a partnership, we work with the village bank, Nongshanghao. They create a new production for the different villages from the financial point of view. We set up joint ventures type of things to finance it, to take the risk, and also if we really invest it, they trust and they give us more space to do something new. But yeah, it's difficult. It's not that easy.
The profit margin is small.
Very small. Very small.
And does the government have any special policy to encourage?
Government finance the public right? And also they need to make some regulation about the fire. The fire regulation doesn't fit. And also, how to say, the ventilation, the light, all those kind of things I need to support by the government. And there are two more things. It's about the taxation. The original, nobody do tax. But if a big company get into this business, you need to pay tax. And it kill all the profit. And the other thing is, all these buildings are illegal. So all the contract is illegal.
Yes.
So if they, just don't want to give it property to you, we have nothing to do with it. We need a backup by the government. Yeah.
But I want to ask you, so with a lot of these projects, the problem is you're working with existing buildings. How do you ensure that structurally they're sound? You can go through and try to analyze and reinforce everything, but that's difficult and very costly.
Yeah, we work with the 中国建科院 the second party to make sure that the structures
So
are
they
sure.
will guarantee that.
Do they meet code, or do you dance around it?
They just do report to every meeting. Yeah, and they submit to the government.
Yeah.
And government say no, you
Okay.
can't do that. Yeah.
So if there's a catastrophe, it's the government's problem, not you.
Yeah, we need to. They need to take more responsibility. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And that's a key issue for us. It was the same. Is that eventually it got to the point where it took a day to build that, but it took a year to kind of get it through. And eventually, it just said, okay, fine, just build it. We'll take the responsibility. We'll take that chance. But really, it requires. That is also a policy issue. Is to find that support.
I think that's a key point because all projects should be supported by the government. And also, I have a question about the support from the government, including the Dashala project and the Wenqing project. Did government do anything, for example, like to improve the infrastructure, these kind of things, using paths and lines, these kind of things. I'm curious about the Wenqing and the Dashala project.
For sure. Yeah, they do this. Yeah. They invest a little bit, make it more valuable, and then the market will follow up at least. So yeah, they invest in the infrastructure, make all the pipes, drainage system, new facade, make them more or less, and make it safer, fire stations, all those stuff. Yeah.
So that's the example of what just happened in England with the retrofitted high rises with the exterior insulation, fire running up the outside, cooking everyone's what you don't want.
How about Dashala? It's the same. So usually those, like for us, we kind of follow the infrastructure. If that makes sense. So they did Yangmeiju quite early, so we kind of followed it, and then later on they did Shibui and another big road, and then development kind of followed that as they put in more modern, like the surge pipes.
The company who developed Dashala is a stable company, right?
So
Thank you.
let's thank all the panels. As well as the Chinese students who put all of this together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.